Hello, BookTube. It's Sunday here. We are having a storm here in the UK, more wind than anything. It's been sort of gale force winds, some rain, but at times it's quite noisy. So you might hear some wind, and it's not me. Anyway, I've been watching the videos that have been up for the Sagalong, for the Laxadal saga, and I found them quite interesting. I thought I'd chip in and give my sort of 2 cents worth. I found each one quite interesting. Everybody seems to be taking a different take on it, which is fantastic. I've quite enjoyed it after, there's so many twists and turns with the genealogical aspects that it's hard to untangle, and I sort of gave up trying to figure out exactly who begat who and who was cousin of who, and I also gave up on pronouncing most of the names. However, there are some things that I did notice throughout, and I thought I'd just speak on a couple things. Lukash at Totally Pretentious brought up the fact that it was like a Western. I saw it as sort of frontier, not specific. I wasn't specifically thinking of a Western, but then once he mentioned Western, it was like, oh, boom. A lot of thoughts and came in there, and basically there's a lot of comparisons. I was thinking more just pure frontier, whether it be the U.S., Canada. I was sort of almost thinking of South Africa, where first of all the Dutch were in there, and then the later the Huguenots, and then the British, and they just kept moving outward, taking land. And it sort of what reminded me of it was near right at the beginning where she's loaded up her ship and all her buddies and any who she thought she would take along, and she's going to Iceland, and there's a spot there where she's just sort of, it reminds me of that, she's just sort of looking around and go, okay, that's mine, that land's mine, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine, and she just sort of gobbles up everything because nobody's there, or potentially nobody's there. And then she parcels some out later to other people, other relatives. That's the frontier aspect of just going into sort of the unknown from their point of view, or relatively unknown, and carving out of the wilderness a life and homesteading. And that's, it really reminded a lot of South Africa because of the isolation as well, going over mountains and being in a valley and being quite isolated, and not seeing people for years, basically. It's just the little family unit. And then occasionally travelers would come through, or other family members. Like if it's generations later, the other family members would move and take over their own farms, and they would come together occasionally. And it's sort of it's piecemeal, as everybody knows. Like, it goes through with little snippets of people's lives, but a lot of the drive that I see, and I think everybody has seen that reading it, is it's all based on their past, the society, their beliefs, the actions they make, is mostly derived from the traditions, which in most societies it would. But it being frontier, there's exceptions where people step outside of that cultural, what's culturally acceptable. Like, there was the one character who killed somebody and had to flee, and then I think it was her. He goes to her sister, and she tries to shelter him a little bit because he's being hunted, basically. So there's very, very strong family ties. and creating alliances through many ways. The fostering, that's what I saw. The fostering of the children. They're creating alliances. So in times of need, they can rely on each other, and it's like they gang up on someone else to get rid of them, and it's not. I see a lot of religion in there, in a sense. The Christianity sort of comes in and say changing, but because there is a big aspect of the burial, there has to be a big aspect of religious or a belief of some sort, to be buried in certain ways and the customs for this. Um, and also too, they mention several times throughout there. It seems to be a yearly gathering called Althing, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I looked it up, and it seems to be that's the Parliament of Iceland since about 930. So this, I'm assuming, is an early version of Parliament where people get together and discuss things. And that, again, brings in the frontier aspect where that was done throughout frontiers in South Africa as well. After a while, they would get together sometimes yearly or every so many years. Same as in the States, in the West, in the northern states, they would get together occasionally for these get-togethers. Not they didn't those things didn't develop into a parliament, but it was a way of people to connect and see each other, which they normally wouldn't have because they're so far away. They're isolated farms here and there, and that's what I thought that actually was. But it's not. There isn't a lot of detail in the saga to describe exactly what is happening there. You get that they do discuss matters of state, I suppose, that matters to them, but it just seems to be in some ways, a piss up as well. That they get together to do that. Other things that I found interesting was because there's a lot of battles, some graphic scenes of fight scenes. Not everybody dies in the battle. The one she tried to I think it was her husband's stab him, but it went through his arm and sliced across his chest. The sword, but he survived. But he never had the use of his right arm. Now I kept wondering, and then this happens a few times: people surviving and not having full use of their limbs or whatever, or from the injuries, they haven't fully recovered. Now, again, this is a society that seems to stress ability to defend and fight for yourself, but obviously that's not going to happen that much. And with somebody who is essentially could be an invalid, they need to be taken care of. So there's nothing, I'm assuming, because of the close ties and the family ties and the cultural aspects, that these people would be, and that's where the family ties and the connections that they would have, that they've built up, would help them. So if they were attacked, their neighbors, their alliances would come and defend with them. And you see it's a little bit of that, but I think it's more implied, and most likely the readers of this at the time would have known all this. Or at least I'm coming from this with a different kind of background and mindset, where I don't know all these little cultural nuances that the readers of that time would have known. They would have understood without it even being mentioned. Certain aspects of the culture and the alliances. There would be no need to mention it. Also, the other thing that I really like Tilly's aspect of the shipwrecks is some of it is a bit humorous, where these they're supposed to be these great seafaring people, and it's like, well, we're going to go to Ireland. Okay, where's Ireland? Somewhere in that direction? Okay, and then they blunder around a little bit, and just by happenstance and luck, they actually find Ireland rather than, going right out into the Atlantic. So that I found interesting, that it shows that they may not have been that fully accomplished, or fully accomplished seafaring. They just sort of tried by luck. And the other thing that I found interesting was the swords. Tilly mentioned, I think somebody else mentioned as well, the fact that the sword, like, he curses the one sword, and it would be interesting if it does come up again, that sword. But also, there's the name of the sword. The one, I can't remember his name now, but he names his sword Leg Biter. So. And that seems to be, that's a big aspect, and I do understand, like, that is a cultural thing that's sort of is lost probably on most modern 20th century and 21st century readers, and probably for quite some time. But again, it would be something that was fully understood from the readers of the time. They would just sort of probably nod their head and go, yeah, leg biter, yeah. And you just understand it fully, as well as the purposes, the purpose of, being buried in the correct manner, on a prominent place, and to be remembered for that. Through generations, you would look up on a prominent, and you'd see the mound, and it would coincide with the understanding of your history, or their history, for the past, and how it came down to the present. So it's like I'm quite enjoying it. Like I said, I had to get around the aspect of the convoluted, or at least it seems convoluted to me, of the genealogical aspect. And I think a lot of readers now, which may not have phased readers then, because it might have been part of their society to basically recite or understand their lineage down, and that's maybe what this partially is. It's just showing the lineage, and how where they came from, and where they are at that moment. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I understand they're talking about there's a love triangle near the end. I have to admit, I'm a bit disappointed if that's where. Well, I'm assuming that's where it goes, but we'll see. We'll see what other aspects, if it keeps me of interest, for that, because I find that a little less interesting to me than the stories that they have been telling, their struggles and their connections. But anyway, this is getting up to 15 minutes, or 13, 14 minutes. So I think I'll end it there, and it's just as I say, my little 2 cents for the Sagalong. And if I do apologize if I look more disheveled than I normally do, it's because I received a couple bookcases today, and I've been trying to put them together, and shelves of books, and just organize things, and it's just taken a little bit out of me today. Anyway, I will speak to you later, BookTube. Goodbye.